So I'm Petra, I'm the Executive Director of the Collective Leadership Institute. We are internationally operating NGO, and in a lot of transformation processes that are, if you consider systems change small, but there are big systems like the cocoa value chain, the coffee value chain, educational systems, etc. So, and why this is so important is that what I've learned from these transformation processes that seem to be small, but they aren't actually. They're hugely complex with multiple stakeholders. Is that indeed, and I agree with Nora and with Julian here, and very, I think you also touched on this, that there is a unique combination that we need to bring into stronger awareness, and that's my first point. That is the connection between self, between system, whatever the larger system is, it would be organizational, it could be local, it could be global, and the process, because the process is so increasingly important, because if we do the process like we did the old, then we're going to create the old. So we need to do the processes so that they model the new and not the old. And that is in itself a huge learning process, for which we don't really have kind of entire answers. So in my experience, what really helped and what resonates quite a lot with people is that I developed a it's a whole theory, it's a concept, but it's actually based in practice, and that is the what I call the aliveness approach, and that is so important to look at the systems that we would like to build, and ask ourselves what gives lives to systems. If we understand that in small systems, we can also understand that and bring it into larger systems. And there is a very close relationship between what creates aliveness in ourselves and what creates aliveness in the systems that we're operating in the processes, how we do transformation processes, and in the systems that we would like to achieve. I'm currently involved in a project with young professional women on creating a new economic architecture. And this is a hugely ambitious project where it's really about asking the questions, what would be an economy in service of life, in service of aliveness. So that turned out to be a quite inspiring way of looking at things. And this is so important because the issue is, and I don't want to get in the wording of systems change or systems transformation, because both I feel uncomfortable with, because like 30 years ago, systems change was about communism and capitalism. And today, it's a different connotation. And systems change, I mean, we've been talking about this since the 80s. So it has been in kind of many fora, kind of the focus. And it's clear that we have achieved a world in terms of how we operate with the planet, that we have to do much more conscious, deliberate transformative processes. But what I find so exciting is, and that's a point that I would like to raise here, is our friend Maya Goepel, that some of you may know, she says we actually need radical incremental transformation. And I love the combination of radical and incremental, because the issue is, if we look at the current situation and just flip side, the way we perceive the world, and at the moment we perceive the enormous pressure, and this is justified, the pressure that we really get into collective action, change behavior, do things different at scale, but we also know that the actual change of the system will take place on the local level. So it's not going to be a top-down decision, it's going to be top-down, bottom-up, but both terms may not be the right terms. It is happening everywhere. So what I find so interesting, if you just flip that and say, let's look at what is already happening and not what is not happening, because most people kind of complain about what is not happening. But if you look at what is already happening, then the question is slightly different. The question is, how can we connect what is already happening, which is, kind of, Barry, you mentioned this in kind of convergence kind of initiatives. How can we connect what is already happening? How can we amplify mindsets that are modeling the future? And these are all mindsets that have a a completely different relationality with our role vis-a-vis the planet, vis-a-vis nature, vis-a-vis each other. Nori, we're talking about care. But it is already existing. There are so many, I don't know, implementation, the projects, the initiatives. It's not just about global things, it's many local things. And there is a huge knowledge and wisdom, not the least the indigenous wisdom that actually gives us the models of the future. And it sounds a little bit, as if I want to go back to the past. No, but somehow, and I found a brilliant quote from somebody who was working on mythology. She says, you know, the future is emerging into the past. So it means that we need to pick up elements from the past in order to be able to go into a future. So so the issue really is about, and that's why the academy is also so important. It is really about more consciously bringing together what is already walking towards the right direction. And then, of course, we're not going to agree what exactly is the right direction and how exactly a new civilization is going to look like, because, you know, we need to have inspiring narratives. That's why I work best with aliveness narratives, but the pathways need to be plural, because only if the pathways are plural, that can take place in South Africa and India and Philippines in a different way than in Finland and in Germany. And still, you know, if there is a responsibility towards the future and a responsibility towards our place on this planet in terms of place also in nature, then a collaboration between these different networks are important. So the issue about networks is indeed important, but not just networks that are narrowing around a certain identity and just exchanging, but networks in a really kind of mutually respectful, coordinated way. And so I believe that increasingly terms like earth stewardship, you know, like the Anthropocene article took this up, earth stewardship, or I call it collective stewardship, are terms that are becoming more and more important, because we cannot control the future and we cannot control the systems change. We cannot walk with the old methodologies that caused the trouble into the future. And yet we already have the future methodologies, and some of them are ancient, some of them are very old, and we need to kind of pick them up and look at the Chinese philosophy, look at the Buddhist philosophy, look at the Vedanta, look at, you know, I mean, and you can also look at the Celtic philosophy. I mean, like there are lots of different places, or African philosophy. So it is about, it is indeed about collective stewardship. And I like the term stewardship because it means that the future is somehow entrusted to us. We cannot determine the future. We cannot control it. We need to walk with a high degree of humility and a high degree of mutual respect. But at the same time, we need to be more active, more conscious about human agency. And what is even important, and that is something that we shouldn't forget. If you look at successful transformation networks, and no matter if they are sustainable coffee value chains or getting gay marriages into laws, every protected transformative process somehow needs to materialize in structure, in institutions. Yes. So it is absolutely important that we think about, not maybe now, it's not immediately, but not forget that it's not just about dialogue and thinking differently and being nice with each other, but really saying, how does this need to materialize in already existing systems, because laws are existing systems, but how can the future be anchored in systems that we have, in institutions that we have, or institutions that we need to create? So that would be my contribution.